All right, guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Stronglike Training. Today, we are getting back to our Stronglike Talks, which I'm super excited to start doing again. I know it's been a little bit of time since that has happened, but now that I've got a little extra time on my hands and working from home, yay, we've got a little more time to bring this kind of stuff to you. So today, I'm super excited. I am chatting with Margarita Villa today. Margarita and I used to be coworkers. She's my ex-wife from work, whatever. We used to be work wives, but now we're not quite there yet because neither of us work at Lifetime anymore. Margarita is also doing her own thing.
Okay.
Say again?
So we might be able to collab again and build a different work life.
Yes. And I obviously reached out to Margarita as someone that I respect in the industry. When it comes to nutrition, Margarita is amazing at teaching people the right way to do things, the right approach, depending on where they're at in their current journey. And so I knew that she was someone I wanted to bring on for that little bit of a different perspective. So far, we've talked about becoming a trainer from your own fitness journey. We've talked about fighting through PCOS, but nutrition is something we haven't discussed yet and something I wanted to bring to light. So Margarita, welcome. So excited to have you. And if you can just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey in the fitness and nutrition industry.
Yeah, of course. So I guess my background on fitness and personal training came actually from being wanting to be a PTA, and that was actually the meat of everything. So I was all about corrective exercises. I loved anything that had to do with looking at the body, whether it was gait cycle, whether it was anything that had to do with movement dysfunctions. And my nutrition stuff came from actually understanding how important that was for my own health and fitness industry and journey, because I kind of always struggled with that. I was an athlete, and as an athlete, like most athletes, we eat what we want, and we don't necessarily always think about how detrimental that could be for our performance. And once I understood, like when I got to more complex training and how important it was for me to actually feed my body and not just, kind of just eat whatever the heck I wanted, I started to see the most results, and I started to feel a lot better. And I think for that, it's the reason why I am so passionate about nutrition. Once I started in the fitness industry, I lost about 20 pounds just from getting that together. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. I mean, I can say I was definitely the same way because I had a really hard time putting on weight. And it used to be kind of a running joke at my high school of like, had I hit 100 pounds yet? Because like I was so freaking small and I could eat whatever. And I was, like I wasn't gaining weight. But part of that was that, I wasn't putting nutrient dense foods into my body. So like I wasn't building a whole lot of muscle or anything like that. Like I was playing sports, but I imagine like how much better I would have been and how much better I would have felt playing, soccer and volleyball and everything if I had paid attention to what the heck I was eating.
I actually did. I ran track, and I would come home and I was dead. I could not imagine what kind of athlete I would have been if I knew about nutrition. And I guess that's why we're here, right? We're here to learn from that and help other people out.
Yeah. So the main meat and potatoes that Margarita and I wanted to discuss today was going over how to actually create a plan for you to adhere to, because that tends to be the issue, right? Is that we come up with these like far off ideas of, okay, I'm going to do all of these things. And then we quit after, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, and go back to sometimes even worse than where we started because we tried to do this extreme and we didn't actually put together a good goal. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about deciding what approach is best for where you're at. So if you need to be doing more of just a habit-based approach, if you are ready to track calories and macros, maybe we're just looking at portions. And again, that's all dependent on you and where you're at and what's going to work for you. And then the last thing we're going to discuss a little bit about is why trying to follow everything that your favorite Fitspo does doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to look like them, feel like them, all of the above. So you guys know I love talking about my
say that. I was going to be like, I picked that one just for Shelby because I knew she would.
Everyone knows. Yeah. And I mean, the Science Squad on Insta, we all talk about that all the time, is that, your favorite Fitspo typically is not giving you, one, the best information, but two, again, you can just do whatever your favorite athlete is doing and probably aren't going to end up looking like them at the end of the day. So we'll discuss a little bit more there.
Either.
Yeah. So the first thing, like I said, we're going to talk about is how to have an approach of what we're actually going to reach. We want to reach the goals that we're setting. So Margarita, what is the first thing you do with clients when it comes to doing that?
So the first thing I wanted to say about that is that I think this is super underrated, because a client, sometimes even when they come to you, they're like, I just want to lose weight. They don't even know their why, right? So understanding that first, and understanding what we call the golden nugget, is super important, because if a client may come to you saying XYZ, but the reason behind it is a little bit deeper. And I think building that rapport in the first, few sessions and understanding that is going to help both of you guys. So if we can address things like your why, first of all, two, let's think about why you have started these things. And let's say you started a goal, right? And a couple weeks later, what happens? Barriers get in the way, a trip maybe, work gets heavy. So how do we deal with this stuff? How does that make us feel? Of course, we're devastated. It kills our confidence. It's hard to start again, right? Because you're like, well, why would I even start this again if I know I'm going to fail at it? And I think it all kind of goes back to, the root of things of being, the fear of failure. And I think that's a big deal for us in every aspect of our lives. So one thing that we can do to better address that fear of failure is planning around our goal, right? So the better that we plan around it, the more that we can take that anxiety out of it, and we can at least be like, okay, all we got to do is follow the plan. And one thing that we can do to make a better plan is to make sure it's specific, right? So that brings me to it's textbook acronym SMART goals, right? So what does SMART goals stand for? S stands for specific. M starts smart. I mean M. Yeah. M stands for what?
Measurable.
Yes. A stands for attainable. R stands for
My favorite, realistic.
yeah.
Realistic.
T stands for time bound. So yeah, let's kind of dig into why that's so important. It's a little corny, whatever, but it actually
helps you remember it. Then I'm all for it.
Oh yeah. And it really has helped me with not only my own personal goals, but for me to give that as a tool for my clients. When they give me a certain goal, they're like, oh crap, this is a lot more elaborate than I thought. And it makes them visualize it a little bit better.
Well, I think the other piece too with it is that we think we're setting goals, but a lot of times we're just kind of throwing phrases out there and hoping something sticks versus actually being more specific. And if we think about everything else in our lives, right? Like when we are in school, at our jobs, those tasks that need to get done have a timeline, right? They are way more specific. You have to get this task done by this time, blah, blah, blah. And it may suck sometimes, right? And we're waiting to the last minute to do it, which doesn't work so hot when it comes to nutrition, but we do that in other aspects of our lives. And then for some reason, when it comes to fitness and nutrition, we say, I want to lose 10 pounds. So it's like, okay, well, great. By when? 3 years from now or next week? Hopefully not either of those, somewhere in between. But we need to be more specific, and it needs to be something that we can track over time. And like you said, having a realistic goal, to me, that's the biggest piece as a coach, is that if I'm going to come to you, Margarita, as a client and say, hey, I plan to do a powerlifting meet, and because of that, I need to put on 10 pounds of muscle. You're going to be like, okay, when's the powerlifting meet? And if I say it's in a month.
Yeah. Okay.
So then as a coach, you're going to tell me, hey, that's not realistic for us to try to put on 10 pounds of muscle in a month. We can get you stronger, but we need to be realistic about it. So, that's not necessarily something you have to know as a client, but understand when your coach is trying to pull further, and pull more out of you, it's to get those more specific things so that it's an easier way to set it up. And it's an easier way to let's break down the steps for you, because now we actually know how to get there.
Yes. And that point that you said about it, about thinking about it as like work related, timeline bound. I love that because I actually use that a lot with my clients that, are CEOs, CFOs, they got everything else in life, right?
Yeah.
They got it all together, like I said, they're bosses, right? But how, then I ask them, so why are you not, using the same energy to, take care of your nutrition and stuff? And again, it's that fear of failure. So
Yeah.
I love that you address that because it's something that I say straight up to a lot of clients, especially when they come in, chest all out, like, oh, like, first of all, you called me, okay?
Yeah.
We were meeting because
Well,
you wanted to be with
professional help.
me. So yeah, I know you want help, just take it. I know it's hard because those people that want to do everything on their own is just, they're my favorite because then you're like, okay, well, let me ask you this question. And then that puts them in a really vulnerable place. And that's where we can get some stuff done. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's
So
go
let's
back
dive
to the
in.
specific.
Yeah, let's dive into what each of those looks like and how we can take, let's say, the generic goal, and we'll kind of break down each piece in it. If the goal is to lose 15 pounds. So let's
Yeah.
just go through that SMART list and how do we apply that to the goal of wanting to lose 15 pounds?
Yeah. So again, be specific. So why is that one important? Because this is where you're telling yourself, you can't kid yourself, about what you really want. So lose weight. The specific amount of weight that you want to lose is 15 pounds. So that way you're not really just, beating around the bush and kidding yourself out of what that specific amount of weight is, right?
Right. It's looking
So
at losing 5 pounds versus 20 pounds is a very different looking goal. And how do we know if you got to that goal? If you like, well, I did lose like 3, like, okay, well, but we talked about losing 15,
yeah.
right? So that
And
gives
then
that definite.
yeah, and then also it being measurable. This is really important because then this is actually going to allow us as, clients and coaches to really see the process that's being made. So and we can measure things all kinds of ways. It can be whether we're getting ourselves on a scale, and sometimes that might not be the thing to do. It could be a tape measure. Hey, maybe that's not the thing to do either. Or it could be even sizes, like a dress size. Maybe your goal, 15-pound goal, is because you're getting married, so addressing the dress size, it could be a way for you to actually be like, okay, that feels real to me, and that's something that really intrinsically motivates that client. So
Yeah.
that's, I guess, the biggest reason why being measured is so important. I actually had a consultation the other day, and this person told me that their coach didn't measure anything at all ever. And that's just how I felt about it. I'm like, how dare they? How are you supposed to know? Because I asked questions like, what was your goal? What did you want to do? Did you want to gain weight, lose weight? They're just like, well, this was their focus. I'm like, well, how did you do? And that's important for you as a coach. If you can't show your clients the progress that's been made, whether it is, hey, a movement assessment. I did one of those today. I showed my client, first of all, they weren't barely able to do any reverse lunges. Today, they did 25 on each leg. So
That's a huge
it,
difference. Yeah.
yeah, it shows a big difference. And that's really, motivating. And guess what? It's intrinsic motivation because you're doing that for yourself. So
I think it's
think,
important for
mhm.
you to show your clients that, and clients, as we're speaking to you, like when you're able to see the progress yourself versus me having to be like, yeah, you're doing great, but I have nothing to show you about it. But if I have a way to say like, so we are 20% of the way to losing 15 pounds, whereas we started at 0%, like that's a something we can measure, right? Is that body weight, or if it's body fat, and or being able to say, before you weren't able to do lunges, and this is just a result of your weight loss, that now all of a sudden you're able to do lunges when you couldn't before because your center of gravity was off and you didn't have a ton of core strength. And now that we've lost some body fat, you're able to move better. So coaches, obviously super important to have trackable things, but clients, pay attention to those things. It's not just the weight on the scale, but it's how you're fitting in the dress. It's how you're able to move. Maybe you're able to walk longer without getting fatigued, or go up the stairs without being fatigued. It's stuff that is measurable. So paying attention to your body through all of that is super important. Now, the next point we're talking about is being attainable.
Mhm.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
So this one versus realistic, this one's more about your approach, right? So what is your approach? And what I see very often is that all or nothing approach, right? So and I actually had to change that once I saw that and learned what it meant to kind of move away from that all or nothing and learn that it should be more of a marathon versus a sprint. And again, I ran track. So for me, running a long time was such a hard concept to
Yeah,
get down.
I don't want
I
to do
was like,
that. I'm not into that.
yeah, I don't want to do that. So I had to really be able to put that into my own life before I actually understood that. And what that means to me is, celebrating those little victories, setting little mini goals that sometimes might not seem like much because they might be easy to you, but you're actually setting yourself up for a better foundation, right?
Yeah.
Um, you're setting yourself up. I always love to use this analogy with clients. How can you put a chandelier in a home if you don't have a stable foundation, right? So
Yeah.
that's what the approach is about, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
could just picture it, right? A
Yeah. I mean,
house running
doesn't
down,
make
it
sense.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to not do that. And I'm a big fan of reverse engineering, which is basically what you were talking about is like, okay, if we know the end goal is 15 pounds lost, well, how do we get there? Well, we have to lose it a pound at a time.
Yeah.
So setting that goal of there's smaller increments in between and timely with that, not expecting the 15 pounds to happen like that, but to know that it's over the course of what's safe to do, couple pounds a week. Some people they can lose, if you're severely overweight, yes, we could lose a couple pounds a week and it'd be good, but most people aren't going to lose 5 pounds in a week. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Or you may have a bigger jump at first when we all of a sudden change some eating habits, but then it's a very slow decline, or maybe we stall out and maintain for a little bit, but we're still having body composition changes and things like that. So I think that's super important is if you can plan that end goal, then it's easier to reverse engineer back to your starting point with like, okay, what are the steps we need to get there? And
Yes.
then when we go into realistic, obviously for me and for you, I think we both feel really passionate about that, is that 9 times out of 10 clients come to us and are expecting to be given the world and like this like secret answer that as a coach, like I'm keeping in my back pocket and
Yeah.
I'm going to pull it out for you and be like, this is all you need to do. And 9 times, well, not 9 times out of 10, honestly, 10 times out of 10, it's just not that simple. And we've got to be realistic with ourselves and like how long it's going to take to do this, how big of a goal this is. And then the other side of it is, are you willing to do those things to get
Oh
there?
yeah.
Right? I mean, how many times have you asked somebody, okay, how often do you drink? Oh, I just have a glass of wine with dinner, right? But you do that every night. Are you willing to give up wine during the week and maybe only have a glass of wine at dinner on Friday and Saturday? A lot of times people are like, like I could probably do that, but like, are you realistically going to want to do that? And I tell people if you're not, that's okay, right? Because one glass of wine a night is not going to kill you. You're right. But if you don't want to put those practices into place now and the sacrifices and whatnot are happening, just know it's going to take you a little bit longer to get to your goal,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
I, I completely I completely agree with the realistic being such a huge component, and that being that one factor that I think, like you're right. I think it's so funny when somebody comes in with such a big goal and they don't want to hear you say that. They think you have all the secrets in your back pocket, and you're like, well, this is it. And they're like, what? Like they're
there's no
expecting
work
this.
involved.
First of all, you got to work. Like what? Yeah,
Oh, shocker.
they're like shocker. They're so shocked that there's not like a magic pill. And I think this is a moment where I think the communication needs to be really really important because people just don't want to hear this, and some people are just not ready. So this is where again realistic comes in hand. Are you ready to know what it's going to take some discipline. Anything that you big goal like this, let's say like you said it's like a big weight loss goal, it's going to take some discipline and like you said The wine's not going to kill you, but you are not going to get it exponentially. Let's think about it that way. Every single day you're drinking that glass of wine. How many calories? At least like what, 110 calories per glass, right? So how many times a week does that, multiply to, right? If you're not willing to make just a little bit of change with that, again, those little victories, that's why I think that habit building and setting like a couple of goals like that is so important. But again, if you don't want to be realistic with your goals, then maybe you're not ready for the change, and that's not necessarily on that coach. That might be on you. So you got to talk to yourself, be real with yourself. What are you willing to do to make this happen?
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I
have
mean,
that talk with yourself.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that it's something to, as a coach, talk about and be realistic and honest with your client from the get-go. So, this is something that both of us learned if we weren't already doing it, but I know at Lifetime that typically we don't like to just connect you to a month's worth of training. I don't like doing that now. I'm not a fan of telling you to like try it out for a month and see how it goes, because typically that month time frame, you're not going to necessarily feel comfortable enough yet to say, yes, I've made all these wonderful changes in my body and whatever to like go do this on my own. And maybe you've only lost 1.5 pounds in a month. And if you're not considering all those other factors of like, but I'm not drinking during the week anymore, I'm actually waking up on Saturday mornings and going for a walk that I never would have done before because that glass of wine I was sleeping in, these
Yeah.
habit changes happening, like it's not enough. And so I always ask for people to commit to working with me. I'm like, my big thing is I'm like 90 days. And if after that, like one, my job is to educate you so that you do feel pretty comfortable on your own after that. If you choose not to and you want to keep educating yourself and learning through me, by all means, like we'll keep going. But I really like having at least 90 days as a coach so that, and that for me is saying, hey, like what you're wanting to do, we're probably not going to get it done in a month. And that's not like saying I'm doubting my ability as a coach. It's me being realistic with you that like, most of the time, the goals that people have when they come to us are not something that's going to happen within a month. It may take 2 years to get to what they really, really want, but maybe that 15 pounds takes 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's not abnormal for it to take that long. So I would rather, as a coach, tell you up front, like, I'm not going to say, heck yeah, we're going to lose that weight in the next 6 weeks.
Oh,
I'm setting you
so
up for
that
failure.
I can so relate to that, because that for me was like my biggest fear as a coach, because of what you see, in the media is like, you're going to lose this weight. I guarantee that, that's going to happen. And for
Yeah.
me, that's what experience has brought me as a coach, is that realistic part of it. To
Yeah.
be real with somebody is going to get you a lot further than you saying, oh, okay, well, let's do, like, no, the thing is, a good coach is not going to sell you something like that, because it's not true.
Yeah.
So and that brings us to like the measurable part of the SMART goal, because I'm sorry, for the time bound part of the goal, because, and you were talking about the 3 months, right?
Yeah.
So that for me is something I utilize for nutrition, for personal training, for just even just habit building goals, for wellness goals. Because the 3 months for me, I think it's such a solid time. For me, 3 months is my mesocycle. With that time, I can divide that, like you were saying. Let's say we have a 15-pound goal. Okay, each month, some people might think, okay, 3 months, 15-pound goal, we're gonna lose 5 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 pounds, right? Actually, I don't think it's gonna work out that way. That first month, you're already gonna be, it's something that you're starting that's completely new. You're getting into new habits. So that first month for me, it's going to be pretty much just habit building. Like you said, if you're drinking that wine of glass every night, maybe you're just getting it on the weekends. Sorry, but something like that. Or let's really see what realistically is going to happen, right? And that for me is going to help me understand you as a person, what you can handle. And for me, it's going to help me tailor that month to month 3 of what's going to be realistic for us to get us to that goal. And then have that conversation. Okay, if you're not willing to do these things, it's not going to happen within this time.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's just going back to, as a coach, knowing how to communicate effectively with your clients so that the expectations are set from the get-go. So you're not 3 months into saying, oh, well, like we were never going to reach this in 3 months. Like you're going to piss some people off if you do that. Like just is what it is. So
Yeah.
you've got to be more realistic and upfront with understanding and communicate your knowledge to your clients and say, hey, like this is how we're going to do it based on what you've told me, based on what you're willing to commit to. This is what our time frame is probably going to look like to reach these goals. And then you can also always throw in, like remember that as things happen, right? It is September, right? We just started September. Let's say you're like all gung ho starting September 1 on these habits. Like, okay, you're going to go into October. Do you have kids who are going to be trick-or-treating? So you're going to have candy around the house? Very likely. Do you have Halloween parties or whatever at work, right? Then we're going into November and we've got Thanksgiving, and maybe you're going to 3 different Thanksgivings depending on, what your family dynamic looks like. And then you go into freaking December and you've got Christmas parties out the wazoo. So I always try to bring that stuff in too, is that understand that like you have to fit fitness and nutrition into your life, not try to fit your life into fitness and nutrition, because you just got to understand, like at the end of the day, like, I mean, I'm going to tell you for me, like I'm going to go to that Christmas party and I'm probably going to eat 13 Christmas cookies.
Oh,
but you know what I mean? I'm going to eat some cookies. I'm not going to say no. Will I try to be good the rest of the time? Yeah, I'll probably make sure that the days I'm doing it right, but we plan around that. And that's the other dynamic of the coach aspect coming in is, okay, understand that you're starting in September. Love that you're ready to do this come fall. Let's also make sure that we're planning for the fact that there are big major holidays that involve lots of food in the next couple of months. So we will plan together how to best handle those and tackle those so that you don't feel like you're going off the rails, right? So just another aspect kind of to think about with the timely piece of that is that depending on the time of year and what's going on and just what's going on in your life, even if it's, the perfect time, it's never the perfect time. We always have life that's going to happen, and that has to be factored in. So
I completely agree. And yes, I'm going to have that stuffing too. And I'm not going to be mad about it. And I'm not going to hate myself for it.
I didn't really eat stuffing until I was like in college. And I feel like I was missing out for so much of my life because it was just one of those things as a kid that I was like, if I hadn't tried it, I wasn't going to eat it. And I like just hate
that would have gotten you past that 100-calorie mark there.
Right? Like, oh, all right. All right. So moving on from like how to make these goals. Next, we want to talk about how to decide what's the right path for you when you are making these goals. So depending on where you're at in your journey, how comfortable you are with food and with tracking and reading labels and all of that is really going to make a huge difference in where your coach is going to decide to help you make these changes. And if you're not working with a coach, that's totally fine. But again, I can't tell you how many people have come to me and say, well, keto worked for me for a little while, but then I gained the weight back. Honey, if keto worked for you only for a short time and you gained the weight back, it didn't work for you, right? And the reason most likely is because it was too restrictive, or it was just something that was too tough for you to manage at that point in your life, in your journey. So talk me through kind of your process when you're working with a client on how you decide and work with them to say, okay, what stage are you more in and how do we decide where to start you?
Okay. Whew. So that really kind of just brings me back to so many consultations I've had where you address the keto thing and it's like, well, I really want to lose a lot of weight, but I have a coworker that tried keto and it works for them. And
some keto monster is going to come after me after this, but it's fine. Like, just understand I am all for whatever works best.
I can coach you through that, but like you said, anybody, like I want to say about 90 people that I've coached through, a keto diet have had some kind of break where they're just like, oh, I can't do this. And the thing is, I understand it's super beneficial for a lot of people and that are able to stick to it, but most people are not ready to start there yet, right? So I ask questions that help me kind of put them, okay, even if somebody might have experience with macronutrient tracking versus, and they're just like super on it and and they do it all the time and then they fall off because they just can't, life gets busy. Then even if they do have experience with tracking macros, sometimes that's not a place where I start people because like you said, it's what's working for you at that moment. So I might ask questions where I ask, how are they doing with, their level 1 habits? So Are you meeting your micronutrient needs? And if they don't even know what I mean by that, then I'm like, okay, are you taking a multivitamin? No. Okay. Are you hydrating adequately? Are you drinking half your weight in ounces? Nope. Okay. So we're not ready to start keto even right there. Are you chewing your food? I feel like this one's really underrated because this one helps so much with digestion, might help with your bloating, it's things that people are just like completely not even think about, or they just basically swallow their food, and in that itself can already make some changes. Let's say, oh, I love this one. I know you'll like this one too, Shelby. Rest and recovery. How are you sleeping? Oh man, this one is another one of those underrated things. If you're sleeping,
Yeah.
again, go back to that boss lady, that CFO. Are you sleeping at all? No, you don't understand why you're not, losing weight. I'll tell you right there, that might be a huge factor.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's something that I think a lot of people, like you said, like they jump to like the next best thing of like, they saw this work for somebody else, or, it showed up in a magazine, or their favorite Fitspo or whatever is doing this extreme version. And, this is something that a lot of my friends on the internet also talk about, all my internet friends, is the messy middle, right? Is like, we're not this extreme of like cutting out a food group completely, or not eating any carbs, or which, like, I'm like, do you eat vegetables? Okay. But
Yeah.
we don't need to, I know. Yeah. Whole other thing if we need to discuss like, are veggies your carbs? So, but people forget about the fact that there's like these other small things that really need to be tailored in. And for me, I just call them my non-negotiables, that like those things need to be hit before we get into more specific dietary changes. Like, you need to be drinking water every day. Like, you should not only be drinking a glass of water once a day and then you're drinking sweet tea or Gatorade or a soda for the rest. Or like, I've had some people come to me and they're like, I'm really, really bad at drinking water. Like, I just don't like it. And I'm like, so what do you drink? And they're like, I just don't really drink much. Like, I drink coffee in the morning, and then like maybe I'll have a soda at lunch, and at dinner I probably like won't have anything, or maybe I drink a glass of wine or I drink a beer. It's like, holy, I mean, oh my gosh, that you're not drinking any water throughout the day. That's like, first things first, like how much better your body's going to feel when you're actually hydrating, right? And the
I
sleep,
always have beverages
yeah,
around me.
all,
Always
all over the place, right? And then
yeah.
in your sleep, again, you know that I'm like the queen of napping and sleep and all of that. But if you're not sleeping enough, like, you're messing with the hormones that actually tell you if you're hungry or if you're full. And that usually is like one of those things I throw out there without getting too sciencey for people. And I'm like, did you know if you're not sleeping enough, you've got two hormones. One of them tells you you're full, one of them tells you you're hungry, and they basically work backwards if you don't sleep enough. So you wonder why you wake up starving and you can't, feel satisfied at all day after you've pulled an all-nighter, to study, or you stayed up really late watching Netflix and then had to be up at 5:30 or whatever. Like, those things matter, and those things need to be addressed first. And so if you are someone who's tried like keto or paleo or Whole30, or just tried to go super low carb or whatever, if you can't eat a vegetable first, I'm going to tell you straight up, like, we need to get there and have all of those things be your solid foundation before we even touch something more specific like that.
Yeah.
I think the other piece is like, why is that the choice that you want to make, right? Like, why do you want to eat keto? Why do you want to go low carb? If you came to me and said, I feel really good when I'm eating a lot of fats and I have a higher fat diet, and I've done this in the past because of my endurance training and it's worked well for me as an endurance athlete. Side note, if you are an endurance athlete, know that like the keto flu is a thing when you're transitioning to that. And I've had some people do really great on keto as an endurance athlete, but like the period of like transitioning was awful.
Mm-hmm.
Just a side note. But you've got to hit all of these foundational points. Like you were saying, you can't build what you said, you can't hang a chandelier.
Yeah, you can't
Okay,
put
like something with a house, but like, you can't build a house if you don't have the foundation, right? So
yeah.
like, those are your foundational non-negotiables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so once that's built, which that's going to be one of those things that usually kind of goes back and forth with clients, especially at the beginning. They get so frustrated sometimes, but I'm like, okay, show me you're ready to graduate. And then I'll just kind of joke about it and be like, You can't go to second grade. You're still in first grade. And they don't want to hear that at all. And so for them, it's just like, oh, this is elementary stuff. I'm like, yeah. So once we have that, and it happens. So once I have that talk, usually they're ready to, okay, they're ready to build on it, because for some reason it just becomes lighter. Like they just understand it's just part of life, of a healthier lifestyle. If they want to get to those other things, then we can talk about portions, right? So for me, I love to even just start before we even go into like how many portions they need to have, starting with just a plate. And yes, Lifetime really helped me kind of with this, but it really does make sense because um, when I ask somebody, my favorite thing to do is ask them how their breakfast looks like. The healthy plate would usually has like mostly vegetables, healthy fats, about this much of the graph in carbs and starchy carbs or sugars, and then the protein. They're like, well, what's completely off? I'm having a freaking croissant from McDonald's or whatever it is. So then that really puts it into perspective, because what they're eating, it's just that traditional, American breakfast that it just doesn't call for the healthiest way to start your day. And there's so many I love breakfast. So my morning routine, Aaron wakes me up, brings me a cup of coffee, and then out of bed, and I get up and I make the breakfast. And I will, cycle out so many different things, whether it's an avocado toast, but I'm not as basic with just a toast. I'm going to add some protein, whether it is some turkey deli or whether it is a side of eggs, whatever it is. I have fun with it. And I encourage my clients to do the same thing, because one of my clients hates when their food touches. So I'm like, okay, you can have your avocado on the side, the toast on the side, and whatever it is that works for you.
I think people always think that like breakfast has to be breakfast food. And it's like, no, like you can have like some roasted veggies at your breakfast, and it may feel weird, but like it's okay to do. Like you are totally allowed. You can have some sweet potatoes with breakfast. Like I love a good sweet potato hash with some eggs. Like, oh my God, so good, right? And then like doing egg cups and throwing some broccoli, hello Quimby, throwing some broccoli and bell peppers or something into it, right?
Oh yeah. And or even like you were talking about breakfast food, protein pancakes, just do up your food a little bit. And you can even, for my teenage girls, because they don't even want to think about prepping yet. Oh hi. You want to talk about food?
I think maybe we're talking about food and it's making her want to. Really? Can you just sit down? No? Okay. We're just not going to. We're going to hang out right here. Well, and I think the other piece too, like you said, with learning portions is if we learn portions, it's typically in the serving sizes needed to hit certain macronutrient goals down the line.
Yeah, exactly.
So it helps you understand like what 4 ounces of chicken looks like, or like if you're going to do eggs, like how much eggs you need to hit your protein goal. And I've even told, like using your hand, right? So actually, before we even get into that, like, will you go through that so that people just have an idea of like, oh, how they can use literally their hand to figure out their portions?
So you can literally just use your hands. So your thumb size for a women's size serving is a thumb. Most people are like, what? And I'm like, your thumb, not my thumb. My thumb is just really tiny, but and they'll be like, oh. but usually that really puts it into perspective how many calories, comes from fat. And with that, I think it's, how do I put this? It's just like they'll tell me that they eat healthy, but eat like maybe a half bag of nuts a day. Whoa. So that really, and what was it? Oh, I listened to a podcast one time that told me, that was talking about nutrition coach or a nutritionist that was working for the military. And there was this one guy who needed to fit into a tank. And he kept eating healthy. He was doing everything that he needed. And once this nutritionist saw him, she asked him, well, what do you think you're doing? He's like, well, I don't know. I'm eating healthy. I'm eating like a whole, it was like a cup size full of nuts every day. That in itself was keeping him from missing his goal. So to know those portion sizes is a great way to start. So yeah, thumb size for a woman, 2 thumbs for a male. Looking for protein is going to be about a palm size. a fistful of veggies or of carbs.
Yeah, so you understand that when she's saying that, that's like a serving size. So depending on how many calories you're eating, right? It's not like this is all you get, right? Like if you're at a higher caloric
Yes,
intake or
okay.
surplus, like it could be that it's 3 servings of fat, right? Which would be bigger. But just so people aren't like, oh, this is all I can eat is like this plus this plus this. Like, no, well, sometimes like we need to have a higher serving size, right? Those are just what a portion size typically is going to look like.
Yeah, so so sometimes before I tell clients, okay, I'm asking for a minimum of 100 grams of protein a day, I might say, okay, I'm looking for 4 serving sizes of your size of your palm of protein. And that's definitely more doable, right? It's if you're thinking, okay, you're holding that hand up to your plate, it might be like, okay, that might be counting as like 1.5. So you can start checking those off throughout the day. And
Right.
as you're checking those things off, again, those portion sizes is going to make it a little bit more doable, because somebody that might not have as much experience with macronutrients, they're going to understand how it is to be able to track those things throughout the day.
Right. And then I think the other side too is if you're adding in these nutritional habits, right, and these portion size things, that does take some time, right? But it's a lot smaller amount of time than planning your meals ahead to hit specific macronutrient goals, right? If you know that your protein is at 132 grams, typically like for you to hit that as well as hit like a carbohydrate and fat goals, like pretty close, right? Like 5 to 10 gram difference maybe on each one. Like for you to do that, it's going to take a little bit of time. Like, with level 10, we talk about how, the first couple of weeks, like give yourself some grace, but like you should be fairly close, but that means you do have to plan your meals ahead of time. Typically the day before, you need to be starting to plug some stuff in for the next day, because if you try to hit macronutrient goals off of like absolutely no planning,
Pretty
a
impossible.
cluster, what. So the portions, if you tell a client, hey, I need 4 palm-sized portions over the course of the day, that's not, I mean, it's a little bit of time, right? But like all you're doing is putting your hand up to like a piece of chicken and saying like, okay, that's good. Or like your piece of salmon or your tofu, whatever your protein source is. But like that is not the same as putting everything into MyFitnessPal and messing with the serving sizes to hit your goals for all 3 meals the day before, which may just not be something that you have the time flexibility for yet either. Like you need to learn how to do all those other things first, and then we can add into, okay, maybe now we look at like typically how many calories are you eating a day, right? Okay, if we're getting those 4 portion sizes of protein, that's about 100 grams. So I need that to increase. So you know that you're already doing, if you're doing 4, you're getting 100 grams in. And if I want you to get more like 120,
Yeah.
right? Like we need to add a little bit more to those portions. But now again, you've got the foundation of your basic non-negotiables. You know how much 100 grams of protein, what that looks like. And now, okay, if I need to increase that, that is much more doable to be like, okay, well, that was 4 ounces of chicken. Like, let me just make it 5 at dinner, or I add in a protein.
Feels right too, right? Because for some clients, they're like, "Oh my God, that's a lot of food." I'm like, "Well, did you have breakfast?" And or if they're like really far from their goal, and again, they might have had just coffee for breakfast.
Mhm.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I personally don't skip it. And everyone has their own way to do it and how to get there. But for me, that's such an area of opportunity right there. Like you said, if I know I need to hit that number, for me it's I feel stuffed if I'm not hitting those. And I know I've used through some coaching before, and I'm like, that shake chug, and you do it post workout, and it's not as hard as sitting there and trying to down all this food, especially if you have really specific goals.
Yeah. I mean, I had a client I was working with that was struggling with getting in the protein amount he was trying to hit. And he was eating 2 chicken breasts at night. And I was like, bruh, like, I can't imagine trying to put down 2 chicken breasts. Like, that sounds miserable. And at the end of the night, after your workout, like last thing before bed, and he's like, I'm sitting there for like 45 minutes. Like,
A for effort, though. At least he's
good,
trying.
yeah, good for you for trying. But I was like, okay, let's like rethink this. Like, why don't like, is it because he wasn't doing a protein shake at that point? I don't think. And so I was like, why don't we do a shake earlier in the day as a snack, and you can only eat 1 chicken breast a night? And he's like, oh, like sometimes just rethinking those small pieces of like, how do you make it fit into your life is, okay, now I can not feel like I'm trying to stuff my face before like going to bed, feeling miserable, not always hitting my protein goal because of that. I make the small shift. Or it's even like, okay, maybe you eat like a little bit more chicken at breakfast,
Yeah.
right? Because he was doing chicken sausage in the morning. Okay, well, like do an extra chicken sausage link and
Yeah.
then don't do 2 chicken breasts at night. And it's like, boom, there you go, right? So like these small little things can make a difference on how you do it, to make sure you're hitting those goals.
Yeah, and I love that because it's as easy as that sometimes, just, and I think we try to make it so hard for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like we see health and fitness and our weight loss goals as being something that's so far away from us, when really if we're just taking it day by day and just relaxing a little bit and, putting up a plan for ourselves and just sticking to them and, creating that confidence that we can actually stick to the plan, it feels good. Feels really good that, and not only that, but you're actually going to get closer to your goals instead of freaking yourself out, not knowing where to start. So write it down, really put those into, affirm your goals or affirm what you want to do. Like I know I kid about this, but I told my teen girls, I'm always like, get in front of that mirror and be like, I'm a bad bee, or like whatever it is that
I'm beautiful. I am,
yes, for that.
yeah, whatever you got to do, right?
Beautiful and smart. Like, what is it? You is kind, you is smart, you is important.
Honestly, I just started thinking about Cool Runnings when he's like telling him in front of the mirror and he's like, I see pride, I see power. Have you seen
Yeah,
Cool Runnings? Oh my gosh.
power stance. That's
Oh,
always.
oh yeah. You got to have it. You got to be confident. So to kind of like wrap that part up, like, so we've talked about habits and then portions and then getting into actual like calorie and macro counting. So that again, for me, and I'm sure for you, is when someone is really ready for that, they have successfully established habits. That is easy for them. That is an everyday thing. That's a no brainer, right? I would say like we're at that point, right? I'm always thinking about hydrating. My sleep is a priority. Like Stone hates it, and I'm like, I'm going to bed. You know, having that foundation done, like I understand portion sizes and I'm hitting typically the protein that I need and all that. Then it's like, okay, depending on what I'm trying to do, we can get into more specifics of like
Mhm.
calories based on your goals, and then getting into like how much protein we actually need, carbs we actually need, fats we actually need. But that is when we are at a point of knowing we're okay with the time commitment it's going to take to be doing that consistently, because tracking does not work if you track 3 times a week. You got to track every day,
Yeah.
and you may be eating the same meal. And if you're eating the same meal, great. Then, like, and some people can do that. I know me, I can't do that every single day. It just does not work. I've done the like chicken, broccoli, rice thing way too long. So if you're not eating the same meal every day, you have to be willing to put in time to plug everything in, weigh your food, mess with it a little bit, kind of like a puzzle to, pull some portion back here or some portion sizes back here, add a little extra here, pour some of it out, time your carbs, all that. I mean, it's time consuming, and I'm not saying it's not doable, but I think it's more of a, are you ready to commit to doing that? And if so, awesome. But if not, that's okay. We can work really well at all those other pieces. But until you are like, yes, I am ready to do this, macros may not be for you.
Right? You will see results at those other things, even if you're not counting macros. But I did want to talk about some of like the pros and cons of
Yep.
macro counting. One of the pros, the stock pros first, it helps you with discipline, right? So for somebody who likes structure, this could be a great way to do it because you're thinking, it's great to be able to stick to something, right?
Controlling
Two,
is controllable.
yes, and two is great for people with who like numbers. So for me, my engineers, my people who like doing coding, all that stuff, those people love it. We can put it in a graph. We can really dissect it. Again, also if they're already ready for something like that.
Yeah.
And also it's great for, even if it's just for a couple of days, sometimes I'll have clients do it just to be kind of like a wake up call, right? I had one client just who was doing really well, hit a plateau and tracking food, eating for breakfast. I asked her, okay, what were you eating for breakfast? She said 2 eggs and 2 cups of rice and veggies. And for me, I'm like, Like that already is, I was like, just track it for a couple days. She's like, she texted me and she's like, what am I doing? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you come to that own conclusion
But
right
it's a learning experience, right? Of like, oh, and like a lot of times until you actually are measuring food out, you think, you might be eating super healthy, but it could also be that like, it could be that you're way under eating or way overeating, because
now.
once you start eating super healthy, you could be, not eating nearly enough food because of it, or you can be eating it and thinking like, this is all healthy food, so it's totally fine. And then you're over by 500 calories
Yeah.
because potatoes are good for you, but you're eating 3 servings of potatoes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
So
that.
yeah,
It's a big way to teach you like, how do we actually see and visualize what we're eating, and then like see the numbers that go with it.
yeah, so that's definitely a pro. And of course, athletes, really being able to that, and people who are just, again, just ready, it's a great way to really optimize your performance.
Yeah.
Some of the cons about it. So for me, if I see even a smidget of chance that somebody might just have a very obsessive personality, and or not even an eating disorder, or maybe even just disordered eating patterns, because that being already an eating disorder is out of my scope of practice. But even those things are a red flag for me. Somebody comes in, already in pretty good shape, and is just, I don't know, again, looking for that little secret thing that I'm keeping in my back pocket, and they're already tracking everything. Like, I'm like, well, tell me, what are you looking for? Because I can already see that it being not, the actual
More
goal, right?
detrimental
And
to
so that for me,
being than it is to be, yeah,
exactly.
because they're so obsessive. And if you're sitting there taking so much time to hit your numbers very specifically every single day, right? Like you're going to have a little bit of margin of error. Like that's okay. But if you can't
Yeah.
handle that, right? Like if you're a perfectionist, like macros can be good for you or bad for you. So if you are
Mhm.
a client, again, not working with a coach or whatever, understand that too. When you get to that point of doing macros, is that you don't want it to be an obsessive behavior. You want it to be looking at it as a positive way to assess where you're at, and not a
Mhm.
negative thing of I'm not hitting it exactly right, or like I don't know how to get there, or I'm sitting here analyzing my food every second of the day because you have specifics to hit.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that. It should be a positive tool, not necessarily something that, should tear you down. And one other, I guess, con would be the lack of variety. And you talked about that when you were saying the whole, chicken, broccoli. Okay, that's great. But again, the variety is going to be important for your micronutrient intake. And that's one way that tracking might fault you. And it's because you're looking for those numbers. Again, you get so obsessed with hitting those specific number goals that then you're not even thinking about like the variety, adding more colors to your diet. And that's, again, level 1 stuff. So that's why it's important to be able to get through those things before you do that, because you might seem to start getting lethargic and you don't understand because you're eating well, you might be losing weight. And I see that a lot in either ex bodybuilders or other people that have been tracking for a long time. They're just, their metabolism starts slowing down, and that's usually one of the things I address first. Is it could be due to a lack of variety.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, it seems like it's easy when you're plugging in the same breakfast every day, but it is important to give yourself some variety in there, just for keeping you from getting bored or annoyed with it, and trying new things, obviously. But you can eat broccoli every day, but you're going to be missing out on certain micronutrients that are, in different veggies and things like that. So definitely something to keep track of. And there are, you can look up what numbers you should be kind of hitting for your micronutrients, of what's like, in the range of being healthy. And those things, again, you can look at those in MyFitnessPal. They'll tell you typically, but again, just making sure whatever you're plugging in actually has all the micronutrient values as well is important. Again, if you're at the macro counting stage. Now, if you're not at the macro counting stage, just being aware of, maybe I haven't eaten Brussels sprouts in a while, and like maybe I should switch up my veggies at night, like is a good thing for you to be doing. So kind of to wrap up, our last favorite portion is talking about Fitspos and Fitspo's pushing nutrition information and their way of doing things, and why that's probably not the best option for you, because at the end of the day, just because Khloe Kardashian does it doesn't mean you should. And just because it worked for her doesn't mean that it's healthy or going to work for you. So
That's funny you say that, because I was watching Revenge Body the other day and I wanted to shoot myself.
I don't
So,
even know what it
you're
is.
gonna you're gonna love this. One of the trainers told one of the people that were going through it, that because he had her doing like hours and hours of cardio at night, and she called him like, I'm not seeing results. Like, what do we need to do? Switch it up. I'm not doing resistance training. And she's like, and he's like, we need to burn the fat off of you before we put on any muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information out there that's just not great. And when it comes to nutrition, I would say that is the space that like uneducated people run rampant. Like at the end of the day, there's a lot of Fitspos like that focus on like resistance training, and like their biggest faux pas is that you're calling it HIIT when like all you're doing is circuit training, or you're telling people they can get all these results with like just body weight movement when you're sitting there, like behind closed doors doing like barbell hip thrusts or something. But like when it comes to nutrition, I mean, I'm telling you, they're like, I got these results with my booty band. And I'm like, no, you didn't. So that's a whole nother topic. We all know where I'm at with those. But when it comes to nutrition, for some reason, Fitspos and influencers and celebrities feel like they need to be in one camp, and they stay in that camp and tell you that that's the way to do it. But I've had some friends share stuff on this about how when Adele lost weight and when Beyonce, did her diet for her tour, and how all of those things were super unhealthy. And then they share their diets, causing hundreds of thousands of people to start doing what they're doing. Like
Yeah.
Beyonce was like not eating very much food at all to look like she did. And it was a short-term thing. And like nobody puts out disclaimer, this is not something you should be following. Disclaimer, what works for me does not work for you. There's none of that. It's like what Beyonce did to get stage ready.
Yeah.
It's beyond me.
Yeah,
So
as fitness professionals, it's like one of those things that is just, it really gets, under our skin, because we work so hard to help you achieve your health and fitness goals. And when there's so many things distorting the image of what health and fitness looks like, it's just a little, just
I
kind
had
of,
a young girl who was at a gym I worked at and was doing a challenge group with us. It was like, I think a 12-week or 16-week challenge. And when she told me what her goal was, she said, do you know the IFBB pros? And I was like, yes. And I was like, homegirl, I said, before you go any further, understand that when they are stepping on stage, that is not a healthy place to be. That is a temporary space, and that they should not be that lean going forward after that. That's why you see them afterwards having ridiculous cheat meals. And then they, if they do it correctly, are reverse dieting back up in calories. But being on stage that lean is not how they live their life. And if they do, it's not healthy for them. They're probably, losing bone density. And I mean, it's just, and muscle mass is not there,
yeah,
not healthy for actual, again, like you said, health, not just looking aesthetically pleasing in the mirror. So, it's just a distorted image that we have. And in the nutrition boat of it, if we're looking at why following whatever they do, thinking it's going to make you look like Beyonce, which, come on, y'all, we're never going to look like Beyonce, but
come on.
like, let's just be realistic. I'm 5'2", and like, it's just never going to happen. But if you think about it in terms of, okay, like I could follow the same, like Beyonce could put out, Queen Bee's nutrition plan, and she would sell millions of copies, like millions of copies. And you could eat it exactly like she does. You could eat it at the same time that she does every single day. You could follow the same workout plan that she does every single day. But what does Beyonce's life look like outside of her fitness and nutrition routine, right? What does her sleep look like? Yeah, she spent all this time getting after it and stuff, right? But her stress levels, one, are probably insanely high, but then there's other pieces of her life that she doesn't have to worry about that we do, right? We're worrying about paying our mortgage, paying bills, dealing with our kids. I say dealing with our kids. I don't even have kids, but dealing with our fur children, like destroying stuff. I have to go to work. I have to do these things that are a lot of other external factors that are not the same as your favorite Fitspo,
Yeah.
right? And then internally, I think Beyonce's pretty tall. She's not 5'2". So already my build versus Beyonce's is very different, which means that my metabolism is not the same as hers. So what I'm doing isn't going to matter if it's the exact same as her. I'm not going to end up looking exactly like she does. It just doesn't make sense to.
And sometimes that's the thing, is comparing ourselves to these figures that we see portrayed to us, by a whole marketing team and glam squad. What they're showing us is not necessarily what it really is. And so, like you said, if we were to put a bunch of women in the same room eating the same food, doing the same exercises, a couple weeks later, what's going to happen? The changes in the results are going to be completely different. And that shouldn't be discouraging. That should be a wake-up call for us to be like, okay, maybe we need to really dig deep and think about what makes us happy and how we're going to get to our goals. So, and maybe that's you working on your own on what that looks like, or working with a fitness professional that understands that your build and your metabolism is yours, and not one that doesn't build a one size fits all.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I have had like a wife come to me and her and her husband both decided to start Weight Watchers, or her and her husband both decided to cut out drinking. And the husband lost 10 pounds where she only lost 4. Oh, you did, like, you guys are eating all your meals the same. Like, you prep breakfast, like he's taking his lunch, you take your lunch, and then you eat dinner together. So that's the same. You're going to bed at the same time, and you're getting different results because he's a man and you're a female, and your metabolisms are different and your makeup is different. Your height, your weight, your age, everything else that you've done in your life leading up to now. Did they have more weight to lose than you do, right? Do they have more body fat than you do? So there's so many other pieces that go into that. And our big point in that is to understand that at the end of the day, like, one, working with a coach is great, but 2, understand that when you're looking at nutrition, it's for you and it's not for anybody else. And it's not because of anybody else, because the minute you decide that it's about you, that's going to give you like the freedom to finally focus on yourself versus comparing to XYZ Fitspo influencer, Beyonce type person that you think you want to be like. The other side of this, I always think about just in terms of, if you think like, oh, I don't do that. Well, if you have bought into, and this is not a bad thing if you did, but if you have bought into Noah Olson's, fitness training stuff, he's a huge CrossFitter that's massively built. And he came out with, I can't remember what it's, something about like happy and humble training, right? Every CrossFit athlete has come out with their own blueprint or training method. Tons of big name athletes and even like just celebrities have their fitness app, right? Do what I do. And that's what all of them marketed as, is you can train just like me. I'm going to send you my training regimen every single day. And they pull in tons of people because everyone thinks that's like, if I train just like Noah Olson, if I train just like Lauren Fisher, if I train just like Beyonce, that's who I'm going to look like. And it's the same with nutrition. Like, that's not the case. Like, who looks like Noah Olson now after doing his program? Like, please show me that that's what you look like. Because you don't. And that's fine. You may be super fit, but you're not going to look exactly like that. And the nutrition aspect too, like, it's not going to shape you and whatever, just like that. And also, at the end of the day, remember that their photos are likely filtered or touched up. So like, what you're seeing is not actually what Beyonce looks like on a regular basis.
That's why it's important to focus on yourself and do it for you at the end of the day. Because that's the, vein of unhappiness. If you keep comparing yourself to others, it's about what makes you happy. And I keep saying that, but that's so important for us to remember, because so often do I have clients that compare themselves to others. And once they get that past that little phase of, okay, I get it. It's for me. That for me helps me get them closer to their goal. And not only that, they're genuinely enjoying themselves a lot more and making it a lifestyle.
And I'll say this last piece is that I think that what's really great about when you start paying attention to your nutrition is that it's typically not just about what you're eating, like what you're actually physically putting into your mouth. It is about taking care of your body as a whole. Like you said, the
Mhm.
sleep recovery aspects, like those are things that are typically addressed in nutrition coaching. It's not just about like, here's your calories and macros. Like it's also when are you eating, like planning around your workouts, your sleep schedule, all of those other factors. And so then you really start like taking care of yourself. And I mean, that's the big picture at the end of the day, is like, you have to take care of you as a whole person. And nutrition coaching helps you have to dive a little bit into like your why, I would say, more than working out does, because a lot of people can aimlessly work out and not ever think about why they're doing what they're doing. But I don't think that that's really possible in nutrition coaching. There's just so much more mental and emotional investment in your nutrition coaching, or like when you start working on your nutrition, than there is in just working out.
Yeah, 100%. So off, like when I first started nutrition coaching, I think for me that was the biggest thing, is understanding why, through we both have the same nutrition certification, but the sociology part was so big, and I didn't really understand it until I was putting it into practice and understanding, and seeing so many people be, you know, just break down and really understand that that's important, to be, this wasn't something that was really reflecting other parts of their life. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do what I can do for you and help you with this piece. And hopefully it's going to translate into other things. And more often than not, it does. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's an awesome experience once you tailor that in, because like I said, it's not just nutrition. It's like you start really taking care of yourself as a human, like caring about yourself, loving on yourself. And you have to love yourself to want to do those things and sacrifice certain things to benefit yourself too. And I mean, it's awesome. I will say for me, it was definitely, I always, I loved working out, but learning to do all of those other things was like the game changer of like, well, why am I doing it? Like, it's for me. It's because I love my body and I love myself enough to do it. So yeah, so just to wrap up, Margarita, if you will share where people can find you.
Yes, you guys can find me on my Instagram or via my Gmail account for now. I'm still working on, transitioning into my own business, but for now, that's where my clients are going. My ad is Margarita, like my name, add an Avilla. So Margarita Avilla.
And I'll make sure to also tag her in the notes below, just so you guys can reach out to her there. She is doing nutrition consultation. She does personal training and virtual training, which I know is definitely needed right now, since a lot of the world is still kind of shut down, on edge, and we're still dealing with the pandemic that is at hand. So all of those things are available. She's in the Atlanta area, but obviously virtually means that she can be working with you at any time, any place. Well, I won't say anytime, because
Yeah.
she does prioritize her sleep. So I'd say anywhere, for sure, but not between the hours of probably like 10 a.m. to like, or 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., because she'll be sleeping. So,
Yes.
all right,
All right.
guys, we'll see you
Thank
next
you,
time.
Shelby.